Hola y bienvenidos a Alfabeto Language School. Me llamo José y esta es lección 1 y vamos a continuar con el alfabeto. Esta es parte 3 y puedes encontrar esta lección y otros recursos en nuestro sitio de web que es www.elementocode.com. All right, hello and welcome to Elemental Code's Language School. My name is Joseph and this is lesson 1. We're still going over the alphabet and this is part 3, and you can find this lesson and other lessons on our website, which is www.elementalcodes.com. Please consider subscribing to our website and also liking and subscribing to our YouTube and Rumble channel and any other social media platform. We have a list of icons on the side of the website, and you can click on them and just follow us. It'll help us to create this website, this platform, and we're going to give as much free stuff as possible and to help you to immerse yourself in the language that you want to learn. Right now we're working on Spanish. It's difficult because we have full-time jobs, but our goal is to continue to work on this until we can do this full-time, and we're going to add to it. We're not just going to sit there and not continue to add to this website, because our goal is to create the most exhaustive and comprehensive website that there is. That's our goal, and we want to do this because we love languages and we love learning about new cultures and new things, and it opens up doors to other worlds, which I've met friends around the world, and I have to actually reach out to them today because I haven't talked to them in a while, but I have met some great people, and one of the great people is one of the co-founders, whose name is Anna, and her husband Dado, and they just had a baby, so she's been working on the WhatsApp groups, and she still has a job, and so we're trying to work on all this and do what we have to do, but you would really help us by subscribing and liking and sharing. So we're going to get started on part 3. I'm going to try to go through this, and hopefully I won't take a whole lot of time. I have a tendency to stretch things out because I love learning. I love teaching. So let's get started. So we're going to continue with el alfabeto, and also el abecedario is another word. And there's other words that you can use, which we'll get into later. We went over the alphabet names, and we went over A through I. So now we're going to go over J through Q, or Jota, Q. We'll go over the name of the letter. In parentheses, this is how you would spell it out in English. And then you have a verb, which is defined in English, and then we have a sentence. And I'll go over each sentence and all of what the words mean. All right, so we got Jota, and the verb that is given is jugar. Jugar, which means to play, like play a game. Los jóvenes quieren jugar al fútbol. Los jóvenes quieren jugar al fútbol. So, los jóvenes means the young people. There's not really a good translation of it, but it's like the young, kind of like teenagers, but just young people. Joven means young, so these are like the young people. If you've watched the full video, you know that if there's an accent on the vowel, that's the stressed syllable. So this is los jóvenes, los jóvenes, and then this is poot. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, so it doesn't sound like that, but los jóvenes quieren jugar al fútbol. So the young people, quieren, they want. Jugar is to play. Al fútbol is soccer. So this is how you would say football. El fútbol is soccer. And we talked about how with ir, there's an a that comes after it. The same is true about jugar. There's certain verbs where the a will come after it. It's just the way it is. If it's with a masculine noun, it will contract in form al. So that's why it's al and el fut. Okay? And we'll get into this a little bit later when we get into verbs. There's specific verbs that do certain things that drive English speakers crazy, but we'll go over it and we'll go over it slowly. I'm planning on going over as much as I can, and these videos, at least the basics, will be free. All right, so ka, remember if you watched the full video, ka is a borrowed letter from other languages. And so there weren't any verbs that started with ka, so I had to use a noun. So in this case, it's kilómetro. Kilómetro. And that means kilometer. And then the question is, ¿Cuántos metros tiene un kilómetro? ¿Cuántos metros tiene un kilómetro? Okay. ¿Cuántos metros tiene un kilómetro? So, ¿cuántos means how many? All right, and this is another thing that has to agree with the noun. So if it's a masculine plural, then if the noun's masculine plural, then this has to be masculine plural form. So it's cuantos, okay? Metros. So that's masculine plural. Tiene un kilómetro. Okay, we're going to talk about this sentence structure because some people who are more advanced might think, why is it tiene and not tienen? Because this is plural. Well, because tiene is referring to un kilómetro and not metros. Basically, un kilómetro tiene cuántos metros is another way of reversing the order to give you the idea. So tiene has to do with kilómetros. So this is how many, cuántos metros, how many meters. Tiene un kilómetro, has a kilometer. So basically, how many meters does a kilometer have? Or how many meters are there in a kilometer is a way of translating this. Okay, so moving on. Elle, and the verb is leer, which means to read, leer. And the sentence is, la mujer lee un libro diariamente. La mujer lee un libro diariamente. Right? And la mujer is the woman. If you go to Puerto Rico, you might hear la mujer. La mujer is the woman. And lee, she reads, the woman reads. Un libro, a book. Diariamente, daily. So un libro is a book and diariamente means daily. So la mujer lee un libro diariamente. So that's elle. Elle, and we talked about this in the full video, but this is the verb llamarse. And if you see se at the end of a verb, and you will be able to understand what a verb is supposed to look like. There are 3 different types of verbs. There are er verbs, ar verbs, and there are verbs which are not on this page. But in this case, it's an ar verb, and then it has se at the end, which means that it is reflexive. And you don't have to know all this. I'm just giving you a little bit of perspective until we get to a more advanced lesson. But this is llamarse, which is a reflexive verb, which means that when you conjugate it, you're going to have to use a form of reflection because it is something that describes yourself or someone else. Llamar means to call. Llamarse means to call oneself. So if it has se on it, it means to call oneself. So it can change slightly the meaning of the verb. Llamarse, to call oneself. Llamar is to call. Okay, so in this case, this is what I mean. This se will be taken off the end, and then it'll go in front of the verb. And mostly, it can go behind if there's certain circumstances, but we'll get into that later. But it needs to be conjugated to who it's talking about. So in this case, it's me llamo. So llamo means I call, and then me means myself. It's me llamo Roberto Garcia. So me llamo means I call myself Roberto Garcia. And that's a very long way of saying, my name is Robert Garcia, okay? So, me llamo Roberto Garcia. So, in order to say your name, you can say me llamo. For example, in the beginning of the videos, I say me llamo Jose, okay? So, this is a way of introducing yourself. My name is me llamo. It's me llamo. Double L makes a Y sound. You might hear me llamo or me llamo, but we'll get into that later when we get into more information. So just keep that in mind. M-A, and the verb is mostrar, which means to show, mostrar. Me mostró el mostrador donde estaba el vaso. Me mostró el mostrador donde estaba el vaso. So me mostró means he showed me, or it could be she showed me. It just depends on who you're talking about. This would be understood by context, or it could be even you, if it's a formal person. You showed me the counter, and you would be able to understand who this is talking about either by context, or it would have a pronoun, but we'll get into that a little bit later, okay? It would have a pronoun before me, like ella me mostró, or él me mostró, or usted me mostró el mostrador. We would understand who this is referring to either by context, or it would actually have a pronoun in front of it. El mostrador is the counter, or the display case. El mostrador is how you would say counter in Spanish. Donde is where. Donde estaba, where it was. El vaso, estaba el vaso, the cup, el vaso. All right, so she or he or you showed me the counter where the cup was located. Enne, and the verb is necesitar. It means to need. This is a good verb to know. Necesitar, necesito, I need. Necesitar, to need. Okay, and necesitamos salir ahora mismo. Necesitamos salir ahora mismo. So necesitamos is conjugated necesitar as we need to. So necesitamos is conjugated as we need. Salir means to leave. And then ahora means now. And mismo means same. But when you have ahora mismo, it means right now. Right now. So necesitamos salir ahora mismo means we need to leave right now. And then we have enne. And this is a very hard verb to say. Enne. This verb is ñoñear. Ñoñear. But this is the letter that you will see in niños, señora, or señor. Okay, this verb is ñoñear, which is to whine, and it's very hard to say. Ñoñear. But if you practice it now, you'll be able to say it. All right, so los niños de la señora siempre están ñoñeando. Okay, los niños de la señora siempre están ñoñeando. So los niños are how you would say the children. And El Niño was a weather pattern, and it meant the child. I don't know why it was called the child, but los niños are the children. De la señora, so de la señora is of the woman. Los niños de la señora are the children of the woman. So this is how you would say the woman's children, because in Spanish you have to say of the woman or of whoever as the possession. Siempre is how you would say always. Siempre. Están, they are. Ñoñeando. Ñoñeando. They're always whining. So los niños de la señora siempre están ñoñeando. And you're going to have to practice ñoñeando because I have to practice it too, because it is a difficult word to say. And I don't think I've ever really used it, but it's good to know it if someone's whining. Usually I would hear somebody say llorando, which is crying, but whining is slightly different, so it's good to know. All right, O, and obedecer. Obedecer, which means to obey. Obedecer, which means to obey. And the example is debes obedecer a tus padres. Debes obedecer a tus padres. You should, debes, this is in the informal conjugation. It has an S on the end. This is how you know. And we'll get into that when we get into verbs, but debes means you should or you must. Obedecer, you must obey. Debes obedecer, it means you should obey or you must obey. It seems weird because it's like you must to obey because it's in the infinitive, but the thing that happens with deber, when it's conjugated, you have to have the verb in the infinitive if you're going to add a verb after it. So debes obedecer, debes pagar, debes hacer algo. Okay. All of those things, you're going to have it in the infinitive, and it's going to look weird for you to translate it into English. It's going to seem weird because you must to obey. You can think about it as it is important, it is necessary to obey. But really, if it's conjugated to you, it's you should obey. You should. So debes obedecer, it's you must obey. A tus padres, this is one of the places where a has to come, but it's not necessarily because of a verb. It's because of tus padres. So this is you must obey. A tus padres is how you would say your parents. And there's something that happens when you're talking about a specific person in certain sentences or questions, and it has to have an a in front of whatever it is. This is tus means your, and padres means parents. Okay, so debes obedecer a tus padres. Pe, okay, the verb is poder, and we've had a couple examples where poder is conjugated in a certain way, and I told you that it's better to think of it as to be able, because then you have the infinitive. If you have the infinitive after it, it would mean to do something. Like in this case, hablar means to speak. It can be translated as can, but it's better to think of it as to be able to, because in this sentence, it's no puedo hablar mucho español. No puedo hablar mucho español. And then I have yo in parentheses because puedo is conjugated in the yo form, which means I. But you don't need the pronoun. We don't need the yo or whatever the pronouns are, because the verb is conjugated to the pronoun. But we'll get into that when we talk about verbs. There's two exceptions. So this is conjugated in the yo form. And so in this case, the example is no puedo hablar mucho español. This would only be used if you're emphasizing something. If you're just saying I can't speak a lot of Spanish, you would say, if you're like, I am unable to speak a lot of Spanish. Yo no puedo hablar mucho español. So it's used for emphasis. But if you're not emphasizing, you can just say no puedo hablar mucho español. No puedo hablar mucho español, which literally means I am unable to speak a lot of Spanish. I'm unable to speak a lot of Spanish. So I can't speak a lot of Spanish is basically how you would translate this. And then we have cool, which the example is querer, which means to want. This is a verb that you should learn. So we have cool, which is Q in English, cool, and the verb that is given is querer, which means to want. Querer, and the sentence is quiere quitar la ropa mojada. Quiere quitar la ropa mojada. And you'll notice that just like in English, Q has a U after it. It makes a K sound. All right, but this is quiere quitar la ropa mojada. So quiere is querer, which means to want, and it's conjugated to be he wants or she wants, or it could be you want, although it depends on context. This is going to be just like where you don't know who it's talking about, but this is not going to be something that someone's just going to say without context. If it didn't have context, then it would either have a name of a person or a pronoun. All right, so quiere quitar la ropa mojada. Quiere quitar la ropa mojada. So quiere could mean he wants, or it could also mean she wants, or it could even mean you formal want. Quitar is to remove. Quitar. La ropa, this is another noun that will only be in the singular. This noun will only be in the singular, and it means clothes. Even though in English it's plural, in Spanish it's la ropa, and it means clothes. Clothes you put on. Right, and then mojada is how you would say wet. So quiere quitar la ropa mojada means she or he or you want to take off the wet clothes. And so those are J through Q. We're gonna not get into R through Z. We'll save that for the next lesson. That way it's not super long. But I will go over tips. So in order to understand this a little bit more, I'm just going to read through it quickly because I don't want it to be too much time. I've gone over it in the previous lesson, so if you want to have more information, go back to them. Some tips that you can do to help you immerse yourself in the language. One would be read books or articles in Spanish or whatever language you're learning and read it out loud. Read it with your voice. You don't even have to understand what you're actually saying. If you read it out loud, it helps your mouth to pronounce it. Okay, it helps your ears to hear it, and it helps you to be able to speak it clearer. And you can always slow down when you read stuff. Get a journal and a notebook, look up words when you're reading or when you're watching movies and stuff, which is the third one, or shows, and you're watching it and you come across a word you don't know or you know what it means, but you didn't know it before, write it down and say it. It doesn't matter if you memorize it, just write it down and say it. And then as you keep on writing stuff down, it'll begin to solidify in your brain and you'll eventually remember it. Watch shows in English with Spanish subtitles. Make sure you understand what's going on in the show. You can even start out at a lower level of the language, which is like children's shows and cartoons, and watch it in English with Spanish subtitles, then watch it in Spanish with English subtitles, and then watch it in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. Immerse yourself in the movies and use it as a tool. I wouldn't recommend putting your device in Spanish until you get to a higher level, but this is also something that you can do, is putting devices in the target language and using that device for your language learning, just your language learning. If you have multiple devices and you have, let's say, an iPad or a tablet or something, when you put that in your target language and you use that for studying, that's going to help you. And then you don't have to worry about taking it out of the language if it's all you're using it for is studying. Listen to podcasts or books. I recommend listening to podcasts or books. I recommend listening to books that are completely written in the language. That way you're hearing it, and you can do that while you're working or doing something, possibly if you have that type of job, or while you're working out. But you don't even have to be really listening to the book, as long as it's playing in your ears and it's being heard by your subconscious. It's a good way of immersing yourself in the language. Just set aside some time to study every day. You don't have to study for hours and hours, just study for a little bit and use these other ways of immersing yourself in the language. You can use flashcards if that's helpful for you, but you don't necessarily have to. It just depends on whatever's helpful for you. Whatever is helpful for you, that's what you should do. You can make friends on social media and you can practice with them. If they speak Spanish in this case, you can teach them English if that's your native language and have them teach you Spanish. This is a good way to learn the language and to practice. This is a good way to learn the language and practice, and you can use them as a way of thinking in the language. There are Facebook groups that you can subscribe to that will give you Spanish lessons every day, or at least like vocabulary. And there's also YouTube channels and Rumble videos that you can use to immerse yourself in the language. That's a good way to learn, especially if you can listen to it while you're working. You don't even have to necessarily know what they're saying. A lot of this is just immersing yourself, okay? Immersing yourself, even if you're not really paying that much attention. Usually I'll listen to something and I will listen to it for a little bit, and then I will start thinking about something else, and then I'll come back and I'll start listening to it again. Okay, get books in Spanish on topics that you love to learn. This is a good one. So get books in Spanish on topics that you love to learn and start reading them and learn. And if you can get bilingual books, that is a good thing, because then you can look over and look at the English or whatever your native language is, and you can understand what is being said in the Spanish. Okay. All right, enjoy the process and don't worry about not getting what you are learning right away or being perfect at it. You will never be perfect at everything, so don't worry about it. Just have fun with it, and if you get frustrated at certain things, just come back and do something else or switch to something else. All right, and just enjoy the process and don't worry about not getting what you are learning right away. You are not going to be perfect at it. You're not even perfect at your native language, even if you like to think you are and think that it's your job to correct everybody else. I think that constructive criticism is good, but if you think that you're perfect at something, then you haven't really understood that you are not even perfect at your native language. You might be at a higher level, but there are going to be times where you make a mistake. If you don't think you will, record yourself in the language and talk about something and try not to edit it and see if you make a mistake, because something is always going to happen, especially if you record stuff. You're not going to be perfect, so don't worry about it and just enjoy the process. And if you get frustrated, take a break, go do something else, go get some tacos, go take a walk around the block, do something, go punch out a punching bag, do something, just go walk away and then come back to it later. You got to make it an enjoyable process. If it's a chore, then you're not going to want to do it. So you got to make it an enjoyable process. So hopefully these tips have helped you, and hopefully you can use them to immerse yourself and to enjoy the process of learning a language. And you got to believe that you can learn it. You have to believe that you can learn. You got to believe it, because if you don't believe it, you won't do it. But if you believe you can, or you believe you can't, you're right. So hopefully this helps you, and I'm going to try to motivate you also through these videos and let you know that it is possible for you to learn a language. It is possible. You just have to believe you can, and you have to make it a top priority, and you have to have a strong why as to why you want to learn. Okay? And I'm going to continue to remind you of that, because if you want to learn another language, you have to have a reason for doing so. And it can't just be, oh, it seems like fun or whatever. If it's to make more money or to be able to travel to multiple different locations and to be able to communicate with the people in that location, those are powerful tools that you can use to help motivate you into learning the language, but do it in a fun way. And so hopefully these things have helped you. My name is Joseph, and this has been an interesting video to try to edit, but I will see you in the next one, and we'll go through the rest of the alphabet and we'll continue on. All right. So until the next video, hasta luego. Ciao, ciao.